Wow, what a year. 2023. It's now officially over. And really, like, what a year, you know? It was pants, specifically for movies. It was whew, I mean talking about the year of the flop busters, man. Wow. Man, I have never seen a year like this. And it really got me really interested in really the movie performances, honestly, like how movies perform at the box office, specifically for superhero movies. I mean, we had 8 superhero movies this year. Wow, 8 superhero movies. 4 Marvel, 4 DC, one of them was animated, and one made money. We haven't seen this kind of performance for superhero movies since like the early 2000s. This is wild, man. Wild. So, what I wanted to do is this year, 2024, is go through all of the Marvel Cinematic Universes in the Infinity Saga, phases 1 through 3. I'm going to go through all of them, watch one every 2 weeks, I guess. And I want to go through, and I want to really go back and remember what those movies were actually like, and go through and one by one and review each movie, and just kind of look at like how do these movies stack up to modern times. Now, like Iron Man, for instance, 6 years old. Sorry, not 6, 16 years old. Avengers Infinity War is 6 years old. I cannot believe, I am blowing my own mind right now. 6 years old. Oh my gosh. Whoa. That is, oh my goodness gracious. Oh man, that is the weirdest thing in the world. I remember, like, I was 18 when that movie came out. It came out in 2018. I was 18 when it came out. And I remember specifically going to see it opening night. I mean, my word. I mean, it is, oh my gosh. But we're not here to talk about Avengers Infinity War. We are here to talk about Iron Man. And I'm going to be, in this series, full spoilers ahead, I'm going to be talking as much as I want about this movie, Iron Man. And the reason I want to do this is because 2023, it has 3 Marvel movies specifically. We're not going to talk about the DC movies. The DC movies was an absolute tragedy, which I was a fan of the DCEU, but that's another thing. The Marvel movies, though, it was a huge phenomenon. Okay, huge phenomenon, and like in 2019, it was the peak, prime, and now it's fallen to tragic numbers. I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, I mean, it looked terrible. It didn't do very good. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 should have made $1 billion, but didn't. And then the Marvels, whew. Anyways, let's talk about Iron Man here, okay? Because that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about Iron Man. Again, full spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, honestly, go check them out. Like you gotta start from the beginning and go check out all the movies, man. Amazing. Okay, so Iron Man. I just finished rewatching it, and it's been about 3 years now since I rewatched Iron Man last. And rewatching, I've been watching a lot of different movies, right? I've been watching just a ton. I was telling a friend recently, 35, I think, no, it's 37 after today. 37 movies in December. Most of them brand new, too. 37 movies I've watched in December alone. Boy, howdy, have I been busy. And I've been watching a ton of different movies recently. I've been going through and I've been watching a lot of, like, the top 100 movies of all time. And I've got a list. I got a whole poster and everything. I got a list. And, like, a lot of these are really, really good movies. And so, I've been kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, I used to be a huge fan. The only movies I used to watch in theaters was basically superhero movies and maybe some other, like, brand recognized movies. So, I'm like, okay, I want to see how these movies hold up. Now that I've been watching over the last couple of years, I've been watching a ton of these movies. I want to see how those movies hold up. So I watched Iron Man, and dude, they could not have made that movie any better. It was exactly everything it needed to be. For 2000, especially for 2008, like I'm thinking this. Okay, so let's start off with visuals, right? CGI, right? 16 years old CGI, right? I don't know what all they did with CGI and everything like that. The CGI is seamless, absolutely seamless CGI. The effects are still fantastic to this day. I no complaints on the CGI, no complaints on the effects at all. From 2008, 16 years ago, man, like that's ridiculous. But I think the interesting thing here is when we're talking about like the visuals and the effects, the biggest problem a lot of the older movies had was that everything was cringy, if you know what I mean, right? Or cheesy, I guess would be a better word for it. I watched Superman and Superman 2 about a week or two ago. I watched them. Superman I rewatched, but I watched Superman 2 for the first time. And the biggest thing that stood out to me was the fact that it wasn't the effects being dated and everything. Actually, I thought the effects looked actually pretty decent for the 70s. I was like, wow, okay, that doesn't look horrible, Like it looks better than I was expecting. But the thing I noticed the most was the fact that the movie itself didn't have that cool factor to it, if you get what I mean, right? I think with superheroes, right? You got to mix in the cool factor, and then you got to mix in the heart and emotion to it all, right? And the character, and so you got to mix all of that in together. And I think that's what Iron Man does. That's what a lot of these movies do. Like when you start around 2006, 2008. I haven't watched any of the X-Men movies, so I'm not gonna compare it to any of those. But like for instance, Christopher Nolan's Batman, the Dark Knight trilogy, right? I think we talk about like realism, right? We talk about how realistic Christopher Nolan's Batman is, but let's just be honest, it's not, right? None of these superhero movies are realistic. What they do is they turn up that cool factor, and I think there's a bit of realism in there, right? So let's say, let me think here. I think so. I'm going to use Iron Man for example, right? So the design of Iron Man's suit, I think, could have been really cheesy. Like if you look at the comics and you look at the design of Iron Man, it looks corny. Like it does not look like you would really translate to screen well, especially if it's faithfully. It just wouldn't work out very well. But I think they have it's a mix of slim design as well as like modern technology and enough bulk and like rivets and like all these and like the like section pieces, right? They have the design to where it looks believable. And then they also made it, they also turned up that cool factor up a little bit, just some things where it's just like, oh yeah, no, that looks cool, yeah. And because they did that, you're not going to be thinking to yourself, like, oh my god, really, come on, really, like you're not going to be thinking that to yourself. Like with Superman, right? I watched Superman the movie, and to me there was just a lot of the designs. To me it was a lot about the like set design and costume design and all that stuff that really just it didn't click in my brain to be like, oh yeah, I could imagine this happening. like for instance, the Krypton stuff. Everything was just so clean, I guess you could say. It didn't feel lived in. It didn't feel real, right? And I think that's what Iron Man does really well, is it makes the superhero feel realistic, right? It makes you believe that this could actually exist in the real world. And now there are different ways you can go about that, right? You can focus on the government's reactions. You can focus on, like, for instance, Man of Steel gets a lot of it gets a lot of crap for focusing in on the world's reaction to a godlike alien in like coming to Earth, and personally I like it, but it's not everybody's cup of tea, right? And I think with Tony Stark, right? I think it focuses on his character enough, because it's not all just about the superhero cool action, right? I've also been watching Godzilla movies, like the MonsterVerse movies, and they're atrocious movies, utterly atrocious, because they don't focus enough on the realistic aspects of stuff. And when they do, it just gets really boring. It's just like a bunch of boardroom talking people and about like, oh, how are we going to, bureaucracy. And I don't care about that, right? It's like, where are the people in this, right? Where are you gotta find a couple people, and you gotta focus in on those people, and you gotta focus in and you gotta be like, okay, how are these people responding to the situation? And you focus that on that. And that's like Godzilla -1, right? That came out recently. That movie fixes that problem, right? Because it focuses on these people and how they fit into the story. And it's basically a movie about these people, and Godzilla's there. You see what I mean? And so with Iron Man, what they do is they take Tony Stark as a character, and he's this it's revolves around him as the character, and that's what it does really well, right? Starting from the beginning, let's go through and talk about kind of the movie itself, kind of a little bit by bit. The beginning, I really like. The beginning was fantastic, right? What it does is it establishes, sometimes what I like when movies do is when they take something a little bit out of context. They essentially what Iron Man does with this, right? Because it doesn't start off at the beginning, right? It starts off towards the beginning, but not at the beginning, right? And what it does is it takes a scene that really just demonstrates Tony Stark's character. Like it's like, okay, here's your introduction to Tony Stark, right? He's snarky, he's talkative, he's charismatic, and he doesn't take things super seriously. He's not a really serious guy. You do that, you show the inciting incident, and then you go, okay, now we're going to give some context to what you just saw here. And then that's when they go to Las Vegas, right? That's when they go to that bit of where he's supposed to be getting an award. And then basically that whole bit right there in the beginning, it's entirely character building. Like the award scene is showing like both his genius, and it's showing how little he cares. And then he goes and then you see him he's in the casino, and then you see he's a fun-loving guy, and it's building up his character. And you see how he reacts with the environment around him, and especially the way I think it was a Caesar. He handed off his award to a guy dressed in a Caesar costume in like one of the casinos, and he's just like, here, he's like, I don't care. It just shows how little he cares about all of this stuff here. And then of course it goes, each scene right there, all the way up until you get to the inciting incident. Every scene builds a little bit of character. It shows you his character, so that by the time you get to the inciting incident, you know who he is as a character. You know who he is. And then you get to that, and then it builds him up a little bit more, right? And it doesn't build him up as in like, oh, like it inflates his ego or, you know, like, oh my gosh, he's such a great guy. No, it builds up his character, right? And in that, like in the whole cave sequence, right? You see the gravitas that his character has, right? Because, and this is something that we've seen a lot from more recent Marvel movies, where there's a lot of quippy characters, right? They're quipping all the time. And Tony Stark is like that. But the difference between Tony Stark and a lot of the other ones out there is that Tony Stark, at least the movie, right? The movie doesn't undercut the intense moments with jokes, right? Like he's quipping, you know, he's having fun, you know, he's snarky, but he's not joking about everything in a serious situation, right? When the serious situation comes and, you know, they're like, hey, we need you to build the Jericho missile. And he's like, no, not going to do it. And then he's just like, no, like he doesn't make some quippy line. He's just straight faced. He's just, no, not going to do it. And it's like, you know, it carries more weight to the scenario, right? And that's something that this entire movie does beautifully, right? And then also, of course, later on down the road, you know, as he's, you know, figuring the suit out, like there's this weight and guilt embedded in him. And you see that underneath his careless lifestyle, his hedonism, like all of that, under all of that, there is still a good man underneath who actually cares. And he doesn't, it's not something where he's like, you know, it's not like he superficially cares. He has a lot of guilt for what has gone on because of him. And that is something that he can't live with. And that's why he does all of these things. You know, he starts off by saying that they're going to shut down the weapons division, and then he starts building the suit, and you know, he gets concerned about the weapons getting dealt out under the table, and you know, all these things, and you believe it, right? And that is in no small part to Robert Downey Jr. And man, oh man, he was perfectly cast, man. And I don't know if you've heard about all of the, like, back in the very beginning before this movie was released, and like him as an actor. And I think Jon Favreau, like he knew Tony Stark, or he knew Robert Downey Jr. And he was like very insistent. He's like, we gotta have Robert Downey Jr. And Marvel execs were just like, yeah, so no, we're not gonna, no. The guy's, no, we don't want him as no, and you know, and good thing Jon Favreau pushed hard, because Robert Downey Jr. is a fantastic actor. Man's a legend. He does that emotional stuff really well, and especially when we get to Endgame, there's some intense emotional beats. Especially later down in the movies, especially in like Avengers Age of Ultron, Avengers Endgame, you really get those more intense, emotional, and Iron Man 3 too, I guess. Yeah, with the PTSD with that one. I wasn't a huge fan of Iron Man 3, but when we get back to Iron Man 3, we will see. I don't know. Some things might shift around, some things might change in opinions upon rewatch, but we will see when we get around to it. But as an actor, I think everybody did a fantastic job. I think the interesting thing about the final battle is that it kind of gets completed by things that were set up earlier in the movie, right? So you know, so that when you have Tony Stark flying up, he shoots up into the sky, and you had that set up earlier in the movie where he flew up, and then he got all iced, and then he fixed that problem, and then he did that to as to kind of get a leg up on Ironmonger, and then they use the the giant arc reactor, to kill him. And I think that was really well done. Honestly, personally, I'm a real sucker for self-contained stories. Whenever you've got like a trilogy of movies, I always tend to like the first movie the best. And that's because they usually make them as a self-contained story that, you know, you don't need anything else you don't need other movies or anything like that. You just need that one, and it usually is the best one. And there's obviously some great stuff in other movies, but like I think of like Back to the Future, for instance. Even Star Wars. I think Episode 4 might even be my favorite Star Wars movie. Just the first one, right? Where they make it, and Iron Man isn't my favorite. That goes to Infinity War. But I think overall it just makes a really good self-contained story. And this one, obviously, at the end, it has like a post-credit scene, you know, that kind of opens the door for more stuff. But it was just a self-contained story, simple, didn't have to do a whole lot. It kind of built up S.H.I.E.L.D. a little bit, and then that's about it. So, but one more thing I want to talk about before we finish up this video here. I want to talk about box office numbers. Okay. So, like this year, I should say last year. Last year, 2023, right? I got really intrigued by box office numbers. Very intrigued by box office numbers. And the reason being is, actually, let me show you here real quick, right? So let me take a look here real quick. Okay, so in 2023, we had 3 movies, right? 3 movies. We had Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and then we had The Marvels. Now, so let's go over. So this is how much each movie cost to make. So Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania cost $200 million to create. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, $250 million to create. And then The Marvels at $275 million to create. So what you typically do when you're looking at box office numbers, what you typically do is you take the budget and you multiply it by 2.5. And the reason you do that is because some money you got to add some marketing costs, and then you also have to add some of that money to give some of that money to the theaters and whatnot. So with a budget of $200 million, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania would have needed to make $500 million to break even. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania grossed $476 million worldwide. It did not make money. We look at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 would have needed $650 million to break even, and that made $845 million. That's good. It made some money. And then The Marvels, budget of $275 million. It would have needed roughly $750 million to break even. Roughly around, now I think these are just the estimates I got last, $204 million at the box office. Not great. Not great. I mean, that's so when you hear people say these movies were a disaster, obviously except for Guardians 3, right? When you hear that, and you also got to think back to like Avengers: Infinity War made close to $2 billion at the box office. I think that one cost like $300 and some million, and Avengers Endgame cost probably like $345 million, and it made like $2.5 billion, something like that. Avengers Endgame, that like those were insanely profitable movies, right? And even back in like 2019, like the top grossing movies of all time. I'm gonna look it up right now. Okay, so in 2019, out of the top 10 highest grossing movies of 2019, The top 9 out of 10 were billion-dollar movies. You have Avengers Endgame, $1.8 billion. The Lion King, $1.6 billion. Frozen 2, $1.4 billion. Spider-Man Far From Home, $1.1 billion. Captain Marvel, $1.12 billion. The Joker, $1 billion. Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, $1 billion. Toy Story 4, $1 billion. Aladdin, $1 billion. And then number 10, Jumanji, The Next Level, at $800 million. That was the top 10 for 2019, okay? That was the top 10 for 2019. And let me show you, for 2023, the top 10 are, number 1, Barbie at $1.4 billion. Super Mario Bros. Movie, $1.3 billion. Oppenheimer, $952 million. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, $845 million. Fast X, $700 million. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, $690 million. The Little Mermaid, $569 million. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, $567 million. Elemental, $496 million. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania at number 10 at $476 million. You see the stark contrast? Something's changed. Something big's changed. And here's the biggest problem here, okay? Out of those top 10, the only ones that made money were ones that had a budget of $100 million to $150 million. And these are going to be numbers right off the top of my head from what I remember. Barbie was about $125 million. Super Mario Bros. Movie, these are budgets, right, by the way, was around $125 million. Oppenheimer was roughly $100 million. Guardians of the Galaxy, $250. Fast X, I think close to $300 million. That is insane. Like, it needed to make like almost $900 million to break even, and it made $700 million. It was not close enough. And this is the reason why people are saying that these movies bombed at the box office. Let me tell you, Fast X did not bomb at the box office because nobody showed up. People showed up. More people showed up to Fast X than Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was a very profitable movie, and Fast X was not. And the reason being is that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse only cost $100 million to make, and Fast X was $300 million to make. Triple the cost, which means that you need to make triple the profits to make back what you spent. And so that's the biggest problem right now. And that's what's really fascinated me, because when you look at these numbers, it's like these aren't like, it's not like we're saying everything's like $300 million. No, what we're seeing is now things aren't, breaking, the $1 billion club like they used to. We had 2 this year, we had a couple last year, and it's not like it was in 2019. So I want to bring it back to Iron Man here for a second. And so now that you've kind of gotten a little bit of an idea of kind of a little bit of an idea of the kind of thing we're looking at here, let me go ahead and tell you Iron Man's numbers, and so you can compare, right? So Iron Man back in 2008 had a budget of $140 million, and it grossed $585 million at the box office, which is pretty good. So you put, now adjusted for inflation, it doesn't look as fantastic adjusted for inflation. So you're looking at an adjusted budget. So this is in 2023 dollars. You're looking at an adjusted budget of $200 million budget, and it grossed in $834 million when you, again, 2023 numbers. Now this would have done, so it made $834 million. It would have needed $500 million to break even. Now Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 had $10 million or $11 million more it made in the box office, but it also had a $50 million budget increase, which adds, again, you add $75 million on top of that, and you can see that Iron Man is more profitable. I don't know all the exact details on all the box office and everything like that. All I can really give you is estimates, but what I am seeing here is some kind of an approximation of it was profitable, plain and simple. I don't know if it was wildly profitable. I don't I don't know how like all those. I don't know all of the details, the specifics. I don't have all those numbers and everything. But what we can say is that it wasn't like insanely profitable, but it was profitable enough for them to continue on, and that's great, you know. And you can kind of see like how these box office numbers kind of compare to the 2023. I mean, I'll keep doing this for the next videos. I will continue doing more of these videos here on down the line. So if you do want to see more of these videos, I do highly recommend subscribing, especially if you've enjoyed this video, especially. Then I would highly recommend subscribing, because I guarantee you I will be having more of these down the line. I will be intermixing these with some other movie discussions as well. I'm going to be, I'll be watching other movies and whatnot. And so every week I'm going to be having a movie some kind of video coming out, whether it's an MCU video or it's another video talking about some other movie. So that's gonna do it for me for today. Thank you for watching, especially if you got this far. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one.